Alright, so the title of this mini lesson is Self-Correction. Can the economy heal itself? And at the heart of the matter, we're wondering, if the economy hits a recession, will it be necessary for the government to intervene, or can the economy somehow pull itself out? Now, since most recessions are from the demand side, it makes most sense to analyze the demand side recession and the ability of the economy to self-correct. And it also makes sense to look at our most recent recession. So, between 2008 and 2009 and 2010 and currently, we experienced a drop in GDP, we experienced a slowing of the growth rate, we experienced an increase in the inflation rate, and a moderating of inflation. So prices grew less quickly. In a couple of quarters, a couple of months, they actually fell. So all that fits with the normal predicted outcome of a demand-side recession. We suspect that the crash in the housing market and the decline in credit from bank failures probably reduced aggregate demand. So if we look at aggregate demand 2008 to 2009, we think there's going to be a leftward shift. And sure enough, just as the model predict, prices are lower than before. So prices drop here, and GDP is lower, which explains the higher unemployment. So what if we'd done nothing? What if policymakers had sat on their hands? What if we'd tried to let the economy just take its natural course? What's helpful here is to remember our assumption about the short run. As you recall, the short run aggregate supply curve is so named because in the short run, some prices are sticky. The key intuition of the short run aggregate supply curve is that since wages, especially, and some other input prices don't move very rapidly, they're adjusted maybe once a year, there is a profit opportunity for firms when prices rise. Their costs of production are not rising just yet because wages are sort of set at the contracted level for a time, and so they can charge more for the output, meanwhile not paying any more for their input, that is, until wages do eventually rise. And so they see a short-run profit and are excited and produce more when the prices rise. So the question is, what do you think are happening to wages as the price level is dropping? Nothing immediately, but we know over time, as prices drop, we're going to see probably wages adjust downwards. And so there's going to be an impact on the aggregate supply curve. As wages drop, the cost of production should drop as well, and that indeed is one of the factors that shifts the short-run aggregate supply curve. So over here, as prices have dropped, we expect what to follow next will be the wages drop as well, and as wages drop, the position of the aggregate supply curve will be different, right? So as it's cheaper to produce, we expect our producers to behave just as they would if oil prices fell or other commodities dropped, with a rightward shift in the aggregate supply curve as it's cheaper to produce. So this new line will be the short-run aggregate supply curve after wages have dropped. And you'll notice that in terms of quantity, we have self-corrected. The original equilibrium was here. We moved through the recession to number 2, and then after the self-correction of wages dropping to meet the new lower prices, we've returned to the original GDP. In other words, the economy's production levels have self-corrected without government help. The big question is, how long does this process take? How long does it take from 1 to 2 to 3? And if we hang out in number 2 for a while, will that create more problems? Certainly the costs of unemployment are great. And ever since the mid-1940s, the U.S. government has undertaken the Employment Act, which promises to keep unemployment at low levels as possible, which means we rely primarily on expansionary fiscal and monetary policy to stabilize the economy, instead of waiting around for it to self-correct. And what this looks like is the economy is not allowed to get to number 3. If aggregate demand drops, in other words, if personal and business spending or net exports have dropped, the federal government can and does reverse that trend by increasing its own spending or cutting its own tax revenues. So either way, more money is left in consumers' and businesses' pockets. So the aggregate demand curve is pushed to the right. And instead of allowing the self-correction or waiting for the self-correction, which may or may not happen in time, the economy moves back to a 3. That's at the intersection of the short-run aggregate supply curve and the new government-induced aggregate demand curve that is stabilized. And you'll notice this is another way to get back to the original GDP. Debate remains about how quickly the economy can self-correct, but now you know what it looks like, and you know what the government does instead. And there you have it.